Welcome back to another exciting presidential prediction for 2024. We have a five-way race between every notable candidate running in this election. So we're going to start out with Biden Harris, Donald Trump, and an unannounced VP candidate, Dr. Cornel West, Jill Stein of the Green Party, and RFK Jr., who might be picking Aaron Rodgers from the New York Jets and formerly the Green Bay Packers as the vice presidential candidate for his ticket. So let's get right into it. So first and foremost, we're going to go through the 2024 election with the five-way race polling aggregate and make sure that we get the most accurate picture for this prediction. So to start off with, we can see that Donald Trump is leading the pack by 2.7%. So in my last video that did really well, God bless you guys for watching it, it was RFK included in a three-way race, kind of like Ross Perot in 1992. And you had Trump winning that popular vote total by over 4%. Here, Donald Trump leads it by 2.7. Now, in the general election, you can see in the corner, he's leading it by 2.1. And so Trump is doing better with a five-way race, better than a one-on-one race, but still worse than if it were just a three-way race. So keep that in mind. So it's like an in-between sort of scenario. So you can see this in a graph form. So Trump is leading the pack, of course, with 41.1%, and Joe Biden's at a measly 38.4. So he's down 2.7. Robert Kennedy, who was at a 15% in the last video I made, is at a 12.4. Cornel West, who's like this complete liberal, diehard, complete sycophant, is at a 2.4%, and not the cool West. And it's not Kanye. He dropped out. Then we have Jill Stein, who's a perennial candidate who has done jack squat with anything, like the Dennis Kucinich but dollar store edition of 2004. Here in 2024 is Jill Stein with 1.8% of the vote. As we can see by the aggregation of like 10 different polls, you'll see that Cornel West and Jill Stein are getting in anywhere between 1 and 3% of the vote. So their totals are pretty much cemented in stone. Whereas with Kennedy is at a low ball of like 6%, but a high point of about 15% or 17% by Harvard Harris polling. And so there's a bigger variance with Robert Kennedy as he's like the third biggest candidate versus the fourth and fifth slots here. And so anyway, also with Trump and Biden, there's also some variance too if you look at the polling here in these two columns. So just to start with this electoral map, you can obviously see that to start off with, we have some solid states that are going to evidently go with the given candidates that anybody with a Luger to their head can really just understand as being really logical, safe states. And so we're just going to start off with the ones that are just common sense. So for instance, we have these states going Republican easily. We have Harris, who's from California. You couldn't tell because she won her attorney general's race in 2010 by a mere few percentage points, and it's kind of pathetic when you really think about it, but that was in 2010. Anyway, we have some safe Republican states also to report too. So we're going to get some of these into the mix. So we're going to have Alaska going in, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, all these sort of states. Nothing that's too crazy coming up, okay? Now, we have some other states that are a little closer. I think Alabama, we can just say, is all red aside from the blue district. We'll just give that to Biden. It won't matter in this prediction, don't worry. Iowa is a state that would have been competitive a while ago. Not so much the case. Same thing with Ohio. Same thing with Texas, kind of in the reverse sense. But there was a scare that it would have gone blue in 2020. In a five-way race, Trump would easily win the state. We're also not focusing on margins today because that's kind of beside the point, and you'll see why by the end of it. Now, going on, we have some other states that are a little more, I guess, disparate. We have the state of New Mexico, which is going to be closer than usual, but it will still go blue because even though we have Cornel West and Stein and even RFK debatably getting to the Biden into the Biden margins, he still won it by like 11 to 14% last year, or sorry, last election cycle. That's including Colorado, by the way. So if that's the case, then he ought to win both of these, even if he underperforms. Now, we have some states that are going to be closer, though, but still probably blue. This includes Virginia. This includes one of the districts in Minnesota, by the way. But at large, you could really see the thing flip. So we're putting it there. Now, in respect to other states that are going to be a little closer, it's going to be Florida, which will most likely go for Trump. And if he doesn't win it, he's not going to win jack diddly squat. It's like you can't be a lawyer without a GED, so you can't win the presidency without Florida. So there you go. Now, to add on to this whole thing, the nomenclature might tell you, in fact, that Georgia and North Carolina are going to be swing states. Shorty, let me tell you that's not the case. North Carolina, by any means, is going to go definitely red, and a myriad of reasons are included in this. So, first of all, in 2020, what made Trump lose the election, I say that in scare quotes, is going to be because of the suburban trend. Now, even in 2020, Trump did win the state of North Carolina, even though it was considered a purple state, and that was because the suburbs are not that prone to be liberal as compared to places like Gwinnett or Gillette County in Georgia, or the Atlanta suburbs in general, or have that be Center, Pennsylvania, etc. So I think North Carolina is pretty confidently going to be in the red margin or the red sector. Now, moving on to some states that are a little more difficult, we're going to have to consult some polls. So to get a better understanding as to who Cornel West is, because this is a five-way race, so let's include some of these externalities into the race and the formula in there. So obviously Trump has a popular vote lead in RCP by a lot. So if you look here, we look at the RCP polling, you'll clearly see that Trump is leading it by almost 3%. So it's pretty obvious to me that he's already in the lead. But let's see why that's the case. So who are these people that are taking Biden's margin in hurting Joe in this race? So Cornel West is like this black guy with crazy hair. He has an economic justice doctrine as a platform. Let's read some of this. Abolish poverty. Well, that's pretty whimsical. Abolish homelessness. So, are any of you guys taking in a hobo into your guest bedroom? I don't want to personally, so I don't know if you guys are down for that. I don't think that'll fly well with the electorate. Establish federal public banking institutions to fund public infrastructure. Okay, that seems like something a guy on crack would say, but like, what does that even mean in real life? Okay, he says also establish a federal universal basic income commission. So a commission, not even UBI. So Andrew Yang mogs this guy. Wealth tax on all billionaire holdings and transactions. Okay, why? Anyway, end all tax loopholes for the oligarchy. What oligarchy? The oligarchy? That sounds like conspiracy. National $27 an hour minimum wage with special considerations for specific geographies where $27 an hour would not be a family sustaining wage. So he's saying a national $27 per hour minimum wage. Dude, are you high? So you're saying that in Oklahoma, where the rent is a third of the price of even suburban Houston, we're going to have a $27 per hour minimum wage federally? Okay, so this guy clearly is even worse than Bernie Sanders. I mean, this is straight up socialism. I mean, it's actually hard to even fathom how insane this is. $27 an hour minimum wage. I don't think we need to read any more of the platform to understand what sort of candidate we're looking at. Now, with Jill Stein, obviously, this is not a crazy thing. She's pretty much in the same ilk. So these are going to be eating into each other's margins, to be honest. Now, let's look at swing states. So North Carolina, I haven't checked yet, but obviously the margin I'm looking at is pretty much vindicated. As you can see here, Trump is winning it by 5.5 in a five-way race. Not surprising at all. Let's look at the next closest state. It's going to be Georgia. Georgia, in a five-way race, has Trump leading by 5.7 in the aggregate. So that's an easy win for Donald. Let's fill that in. So that's pretty clear. Now, none of these have Joe Biden winning, by the way. And it's because these other candidates that may or may not be on the ballot coming up are going to take votes from the Democrat incumbent, okay? So Cornel West, as we can see, is already promising a $27 minimum wage. Now, that is freaking absurd. I mean, it's beyond parody. It is actually, like, it's hard to even fathom how insane that is. Now, if you're looking at the at the tabs here, this is a Sneeko thing. But anyway, we have Stein. Stein also is taking votes from Biden. Why is she taking votes from Biden? Well, it's evident that she is Green Party known for climate change, hysteria, being completely leftist to a fault, of course. RFK is somebody who also is taking votes from Biden. These are the Joe Rogan types that would have voted Democrat, 20 years ago. But obviously the politics have shifted so far into like the Me Too snowflake nonsense that it's pretty evident that the Democrats are going to look really good to absolutely no swing state voter. So these are going to be just carnivorous features into this election. So these three, purple, green, and yellow, are just going to kill Joe Biden rhetorically in this election. So let's look at another swing state. So we're going to move on to Georgia's already filled in. Let's get another one. How about Nevada? Nevada in a five-way race is going Trump by 7.7 in the aggregate. These other polls also show that it's +6, +6, +11 for Trump. So it's not looking good for Joe. That's a red state if I've ever seen one. Now let's move on to another one. How about Wisconsin. Wisconsin is also kind of close in a five-way race. In fact, it is actually at a knife's edge. So if we look at the five last polls, it has Biden +2, then a tie, Trump +3, Trump +4, Trump +1. There's plenty of polls to be showing this as well. So Trump is winning Wisconsin just very barely. But, I mean, that's the result. So anyway, let's look onto Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is another state that's super vital. We have the most late poll, like the furthest in the past poll, has Biden up by 8, up by 1, Trump up by 2, Trump up by 6, Trump up by 2. So huge variance. Very schizophrenic these pollsters are when it comes to a five-way race. But anyway, Trump is still leading the aggregate writ large with like 20 different entries into Pennsylvania by 0.2%. So 44.8% to 44.6%. That gives Trump a very narrow lead in Pennsylvania. So he's already won the election, folks. But let's explore more. Let's go into the great state of Arizona, the one that I'm in currently. It's a dry heat. So we have Trump up by 5, 8, 3, 6, 4, 5.2 in the most recent aggregate by this metric. So clearly that's a big win for Trump. So that's a 5.2 win by Donald Trump in the state of Arizona. That's 299 electoral votes. What about one more state? Let's go to Wisconsin. I'm sorry, Michigan. Michigan, again, Trump +8, 2, 4, 2, 2, 3.6. Huge win for Trump. Okay, so if that's the case, then we have Trump up by 3.6 in Michigan. That's not too hard to settle. Now, when it comes to these last states, it's pretty obvious to me that Trump is going to have a way harder time in Minnesota, but also Wisconsin. Sorry, in New Hampshire. If that's the case, then I think Trump would win all these states even because New Hampshire hasn't been polled much, but it's been close in 2016. If we add an extra couple points to the popular vote margin for Trump, then it's pretty obvious that he would win the state of New Hampshire. Same thing with Minnesota as well. Plus, the Democrats aren't putting money into these states anyway, so it's a pretty low-key sleeper flip for Donald Trump. So if we have Cornel West, Jill Stein, and RFK on all the ballots for all 50 states, we see Trump winning the electoral vote by 328 to 210 by the Biden-Harris administration as the incumbent party. So here we go, a five-way race result. Here you go. See y'all in the next video. Adios.